We all search for something that makes us feel alive. Something that drives us to near insanity, but only because the passion is so intense. We search for something that we simply cannot live without. And throughout this journey, we find the meaning of love. Although we may have different talents and means of expressing ourselves, there's something inside us all that connects one another. The very essence of life. My name is Cameron, and at the age of 13, just over a decade ago, I was diagnosed with a rare and potentially life-threatening autoimmune disease. It feels like it was only yesterday that I was sitting with my parents at the hospital, hearing doctors explain to us that there was no cure. I was just a kid. I couldn't understand why. For years, I tried to make sense of it all. Yet sometimes, things click just when you least expect them to. This is my older brother, Jared. He's a natural singer-songwriter at heart, but our love for the arts isn't the only thing we share. For starters, we have the same birthday, exactly 3 years to the day. And this past year, we found out that we would soon share something much more significant. Something that would undoubtedly strengthen the bond between us. It's so crazy to think about, how time flies.
Yeah, it's amazing how far we've come and how much stronger our family's gotten after everything we've been through.
Growing up with a crazy household of 4 kids was fun. There was never a dull moment, that's for sure.
My family. Basically everyone's pretty crazy.
Our household was wild.
So there wasn't a lot of, there wasn't 5 or 10 years of peace and quiet, that's for sure.
You know, whether it was one thing or another, things were fun and they were entertaining.
They were all, enjoying running around, playing with each other. We'd go on a lot of trips together. The boys played hockey, the girls danced, and Brittany was into sports, and we just had a wonderful time together.
More so than anything, I feel like I just have a lot of memories because of having a large family, vacations and just being involved and having a very open and loving family has enabled us to have a lot of amazing memories growing up.
I always remember, especially with Jared and Cameron, they were always putting on something to make us laugh and just have many memories of that, and they continue to do that now as we're older.
They're extremely close. Each one of them would do anything for each other. If one has a problem, all of them will pitch in to help out. We just care about each other, and so do they.
What's tomorrow?
My birthday.
I remember my mother telling me when I was 3 that I was going to get a little brother for my birthday.
Let me see. Look at me, guys.
Everything happens for a reason, and I'd like to think that the bond that we share as brothers has only been strengthened by the fact that we were born on the same day. And the irony behind it is, goes without saying, for sure.
I had a really, really happy childhood. I enjoyed those years, some of the best of my entire life. But I would say that things definitely got a little bit different once I got sick.
I guess the first time we noticed that he wasn't feeling well was while he was playing hockey, maybe at a tournament. He'd be getting sick in the morning before it was time to play, or sick that prior evening, and the symptoms seemed to be like a stomach bug. But he seemed to have been able to play through it because he's extremely strong-willed.
He couldn't keep food down. Once a week, he would get sick, and we were wondering, what's going on. So a week would go by, another week would go by, and then we brought him to the doctor, and some doctors said, oh, it's nothing, and we could change a diet or check this out. So finally, we were recommended to a wonderful GI doctor who did all these tests, and then we saw that his what they called LFTs were elevated, and they said, we got to go, check this further.
At this point, he ruled that I had what they call ulcerative colitis. People who have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, which is very similar to ulcerative colitis, about 5% of those people will develop this complication in the liver. specifically in the bile ducts of the liver, called primary sclerosing cholangitis, or PSC for short.
I remember going home and I looked it up and I said, oh my God, I hope it isn't this, because this disease, they said, had no cure. And then, unfortunately, I read further. The only cure would be a liver transplant. And here he's 13 years old, and I'm like, oh my God, how can this happen?
I know the one thing that I do remember being the most significant was the fact that he couldn't play hockey anymore. And that's where it was like, okay, so this is a little bit more serious than we thought it would be.
That was probably the most devastating thing, because all in all, he would deal with everything, being tired and if you're missing school or what have you, but the outlet that he had more than anything in life, it was his sport. I guess it was something that he could do and, to get away from things. And I think the day that, the doctors had told him that he could no longer play that game, I think it was one of the hardest days of our lives to hear that, because he loved it so much.
So the worst was just not being able to be a regular kid and do the things that I loved. It became evident at one point that I was probably going to need a liver transplant. And so when that became more of a reality, it kind of came as a shock to me.
There are 100,000 people whose lives could be saved by transplantation on any given day in the United States. This number includes patients waiting for kidneys, hearts, livers, lungs. That number greatly exceeds by tenfold the amount of organ donors. It is the culture of American medicine to offer healthcare to the sickest first. This means that a method for deciding who's the sickest has to be developed, and this has in fact been developed. So we can reliably, although not perfectly, tell using some standard blood tests of liver function who's in the greatest danger if they don't get a transplant. This is called the MELD system. There are different systems for hearts and lungs and so forth. The need for organ donation has been publicized, and I think many people have heard about it, and yet the number of people who are able to donate is still not meeting the needs of the people waiting.
The doctors came to me and my parents and they said, listen, you're young, and as sick as you are, your ability to bounce back from things is good, and you're a perfect candidate for what we call a living donor transplant. So what a lot of people don't know is the liver has the ability to regenerate. So typically they'll take about 40 to 60% of somebody's liver, and then they'll transplant that into me, take out my entire sick liver, and then both my liver and the person who donates to me will fully regrow.
In a person who donates part of their liver, let's say half, the liver goes back to about 80% of its original size very fast. And it is close to 80% in a month. Over time, it remodels and eventually achieves completely normal function and architecture, certainly within 3 to 9 months after donation.
When my family first heard about this, we obviously started thinking about, well, who would want to cut themselves open and go through that kind of process.
Before she could even finish, I was like, I'll do it, without even hesitating. And from there, she's like, you have to get approved and you have to go through all this testing. And I was like, absolutely, I wouldn't even think twice about it. And then from there, it was just a matter of going through the proper testing to see if I was a match.
We all obviously said we'd be willing to go, but Jared kind of took more of a leadership role.
I had this intuition and this knowing that it was going to work out.
Yeah.
I was almost destined to become your donor.
It is currently Wednesday, April 11th. It's about 4:30 Pacific time. I'm currently in Malibu, California, visiting a friend of mine until next week. At about 9 a.m. this morning, received really good news, letting me know that I was accepted as a living liver donor for my younger brother, Cameron. And I feel extremely relieved, finally, that I could take a deep breath, knowing that I'm going to be the one to be a donor for Cameron. And to be honest, I do feel honored that I'm going to be the donor. I'm excited for my brother to start feeling healthy, and obviously I would do anything for him, and I know he would do the same for me, so there's no question that I'm going to go through with this. It's beautiful here over on the West Coast. Right now, when I get back, we're going to decide on a date to go through with this procedure, and from there it's get it done and, you know, start feeling healthy. So I'm excited, relieved, and ready to get the ball rolling.
I was just like kind of speechless, and I was like, that's awesome. But at the same time, you're overcome with a lot of emotion, because as much as you want that liver and you want to live, this is your brother you're talking about going under the knife for you.
I think of both of them honestly as my heroes, and Jared is definitely one special person, and if anyone could do it for Cameron, I think that he's the perfect person to do it.
Things happen for a reason, and he's my match for a reason. He wants to do this for a reason, and finally I was able to accept the fact that he was going to give me this gift of life.
I think it's gotten to that point where everybody is just ready to move on and get this over with and experience this together. And I know it's brought our family together more than ever.
And then, you know what? I think that's the case for anybody awaiting an organ. They're ready, but they need that person to make that selfless act and give them the gift of life.
Right. So we're here waiting for, I guess, the nurse to come in and give me my IV and then get me set up, and I'll be in OR in about, half hour, maybe 45 minutes. So getting ready to go in. I feel good. I feel confident, and just excited to get moving on with everything and have Cameron feel healthy. So it's all good.
Yeah, we'll be hopefully on time. So he'll go in around 7:30.
Okay.
You'll be here about an hour after that, and then we'll go in.
Sounds good.
And then the finish up and close. So I hope we'll be done by 6.
Awesome.
You know, if we're delayed, and we'll keep the family posted along the way. If things are slower,
sure.
Sometimes things take longer. But
How do you guys feel?
It's gonna go great.
Yes, and we love you, and you mean the world to us. You're a lifesaver.
I love you too.
I love you so much.
I would just tell my parents, especially, and my sisters, and Stephanie, and whoever else is there, just to stay strong and be positive, and no matter what, know that this is going to be successful, and that this is going to be the first day that our lives are going to change forever, especially Cameron's. So I'd like to just instill that positivity and that optimism. And as far as Cameron's concerned, I would just tell him how much I love him, and that I'm proud of him, and that I feel honored to be able to do what I'm going to do.
Buddy?
Yeah.
Do you know who you already got the
Hey, Gaddy.
That's almost moot.
Good, how are you? I think before the surgery, it's most important that I tell Jared just how much it means to me that he's doing this. I love him more than anything in this world. And I always strive to be more like him. And if I could be half the person that he is, then I'd be a good man.
Jared just left for surgery. Really surreal. It's a crazy feeling, but I'm ready. I think we're both very much ready to take the next step and get on with our lives. So it's an emotional time. It's a little bit of an anxious time for everybody, but more than anything, I'm feeling really good and pretty confident that everything is going to go just as planned. So I'm excited, I'm ready, get my life back.
Tell them how excited I'll be to see them after the transplant. Just to express how much I love them and how proud I am of everything they've done.
I'll tell them I love them so much and that everything's gonna work out. And that everything's gonna get so much better.
I'd give him a big hug and a kiss and tell him, the best of luck to you. And everything's going to be great because you guys are two young and strong individuals. And it's going to be that much better.
I'd say they're amazing. That it's so unselfish of Jared to want to give part of his liver to him. And for, to make Cameron feel better and to have a life and to be able to live it. And to say I'm so proud of them. They're amazing. Just truly remarkable.
Oh dear, Mother Bear is not here. And my birthday.
He's reading in the story.
Don't do this. Today is my birthday. I think my friends visit.
Oh, there you go. Little Einstein is here.
Who's next? Birthday cake.
Birthday cake. My goodness.
Everything went very smoothly. Okay, absolute beautiful liver, just the way we wanted it to be. Split just the way it was supposed to go. They put the liver in, okay, Cameron, and the liver is. They have a bunch of connections to do. They've done the first two. Everything looks good. Looks like it's working, and everything's going smoothly the way it's supposed to go.
So how you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
A little bit of pain, but I'm feeling good. It's hard to believe that I have half a liver inside me right now. 35%. I'm a little tired, out of it, probably from the anesthesia, but I heard Cameron's doing well, which is important to me, so it's all good. We're in good hands. Without further ado, here's my scar. I now have 65% of my brother's liver inside of me. So, pretty phenomenal stuff. And I feel good. They keep telling me blood work looks good. I want to keep moving forward. I can walk, I can swallow, I can go to the bathroom. So it's the little things in life that,
you start realizing you don't take advantage of in times like these.
So, I'm officially leaving the hospital. Jared is in the car behind me. It's time to go home and recuperate.
You know, it's crazy looking back on where we are today versus the time we spent in the hospital and at home recovering, and how it was almost like a blur for me personally. But it's just incredible what these doctors can do and the human body itself.
Yeah. One day you're under the knife, you know, fighting for your life, and then here I am now, full life ahead of me. It's like one chapter's over and then on to the next thing. So it's a blessing. It's the most amazing gift you could have possibly given me, or anyone for that matter.
Yeah, I'm forever grateful for it and just excited to see what's next for us.
What's next can only be better than what was in the past, that's for sure.
Cameron and I soon realized his illness wasn't as some people would characterize as an unfortunate circumstance, but rather an opportunity to help others. And so we created a movement. We're dedicated, along with I know a lot of you out there, to spreading awareness and educating people on the importance of organ donation, giving them a second chance at life. All the while, we've cultivated a brand that correlates with this movement. The Wave Set has created a sense of unity, love, selflessness, thus showing the world, as my brother said, we are vital to each other. We hope that you'll all join us in this movement, because as we know, there's many people out there that desperately need our help. I'd be lying if I said any of what we went through was easy. It wasn't. There was pain, there were many tears, but most importantly, there was an immense amount of love. And our family has grown so much stronger because of it. I stand before you as a testament to being able to give this beautiful gift of life. And I'm so blessed and grateful to have been given that opportunity. Lastly, I want us all to just take a moment and look around. It's a beautiful day outside, and life itself is truly, truly beautiful. And each and every person on this planet deserves that chance to witness it for themselves. Thank you so much for being here. God bless all of you.
light it shines through. All I ever thought I knew. I'm trying to do what I couldn't do, and I don't ever wanna lose. My grip is slipping now. I'm trying to hold, but I don't know how. And now my world is upside down. You are the one that I have waited on. Oh, you are the one that I have waited on. Now you are the one that I have waited on. Now you are the one that I have waited on. Oh, now you are the one that I have waited on. Oh, now you are the one that I have waited on.
Wow, what a story. Inspiring, emotional. It's one that definitely pulls on the heartstrings. And we got to see something very special, or we got to see Cameron receive an incredible gift from his brother Jared. And I'm so honored to welcome them to a conversation right now. Please join me in welcoming Cameron and Jared Wohl. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
First, I've got to start by this. I mean, I was really taken by 65%, your documentary about your experiences and everything you guys and your family went through throughout the entire process of Jared and being a living liver donor and Cameron being the recipient of that. We'll get into that conversation, but first things first. I mean, I'm a hockey fan. You guys play hockey. I got to know, are you on the ice right now? Do you guys get to do that together? Because I saw a little bit on the end of the documentary, you guys were shooting on the ice, so I want to know, like, do you guys get an opportunity to get out there and skate a little?
Yeah. So I've actually gotten to play quite a bit. I'll hop in here, Jared. So it's one of the most amazing things of feeling healthy now is that I can skate again.
Amazing.
I can get back out there. The most challenging thing is getting Jared out there with me because he's chasing around two little guys at home. But that was a special moment when we got to film that scene in particular, because it was just really everything, coming to a head, and us getting back out there was really so symbolic of everything that we were working towards together. So I'm getting out there quite a bit. How about you, Jared? When was the last time you skated? Probably not too long ago.
What Cameron failed to mention is the last time I skated was about 1.5 years ago, maybe a little bit more. And I threw my back out worse than I had ever thrown it out. And that's what I get for now. I'm 35 years old. So I'm learning the hard way, but I will tell you that's like at the top of my list of priorities, just to get back out there. And to Cameron's point, it was definitely a special moment to get back out there. Hockey's just been in our blood since we were children. And so definitely we wanted to bring that element into the film for sure.
And it resonated with me. Obviously, growing up, myself being from Montreal, and hockey is just part of life over there. And I saw you guys and how much hockey meant not just to you guys, but your family. Like it seemed like everyone kind of it was that glue that existed. Your 4 kids in the house and your parents, and I can't imagine what it's like, for your parents with 4 kids. I was me and 2 other brothers in the house, which was kind of crazy. So to see that, it's kind of reminiscent of, growing up, siblings, and no care in the world. Just your next care is like, when am I getting back out there? When am I going to go play again? When is my next practice or my next game? And then life changed in a way that not many people can fathom. Cameron, let me start with you and ask you. You know, in your documentary, we saw that you mentioned how it was a difficult moment for you. But what was it like when you heard from your doctor that you can't play hockey anymore? What did that mean to you?
Yeah, so, as you kind of touched on, hockey was just so ingrained in the culture of our family. For anybody who was lucky enough to have played growing up, that there's these tournaments. And so it wasn't just something that Jared and I did. It was something that our whole family was involved in. And so at that time when I was told that I couldn't play anymore, everything that had led up to that point, I kind of dealt with, I coped with, with the support of my family. But that really was the one thing that I felt like I was working towards, playing around with different medications. Just my goal was I want to get back out there. And so ultimately when we got that news that I couldn't, it was tremendously heartbreaking. As a kid, that being the thing that I was so in love with, that was probably the hardest day. I dealt with, having to make up schoolwork and having to just cope with having this chronic illness. But I think above all else, it was very symbolic of how serious the disease was, and how much of a toll it was going to potentially take on myself and then my family as well.
You were 13 at the time, right?
Yeah, so I was 13 at the time, and yeah, it was. I actually remember the exact appointment that I was at when I got that news, and it stays with me. It's still something that's it's so symbolic of some of the trying times that we did face, and so that's why it was especially. It was just so special, really, that we got to film that scene where we got back on the ice together, because that was really what it was all about, was kind of regaining that sense of normalcy and being able to do the things that we love and living life to the fullest, and whatever it is, whether it's hockey or whether it's art or whether, for everybody out there who's in need of a life-saving transplant, it's about giving somebody that chance to live life to the fullest. And for me, that just happened to be hockey.
And Jared, in your doc, you said that I think that was the moment you realized how serious this was, and like your brother alluded to, that it's that moment that made everything really serious in your household, and you expressed that in your documentary. Can you tell us what that moment was like for you when you said, "Wow, like my brother can't get on the ice"? Like, what did that feel like?
Definitely a mix of emotions. I'd say the first emotion I felt was shock, right? And kind of this overwhelming sense of reality setting in. I was just 3 years older than Cameron, so you figure I'm 16. Hockey's still my world, right? In addition to some of the other things that I'd love to do, and schoolwork, working part-time at whatever company I was working at.
Did you say you love to do schoolwork?
No, I didn't say I love to do schoolwork. Just, responsibilities. Although, I was a pretty good student at the end of the day, but we won't talk about that. All kidding aside, it was definitely reality had set in, and then some guilt, right? I'd be lying to myself if I didn't say there were times where I felt guilty knowing that I was able to continue doing what I loved, but then my younger brother wasn't. And so it was difficult. And we kind of went through stages of reality setting in, right? It kind of started when Cameron was told that he couldn't play hockey anymore. And that was like the first time we realized how severe things were. And then, of course, things progressed, and we get to the point where the necessity for him to receive a liver transplant became evident. And then it was like, okay, this is kind of the next stage of coming to terms with that reality. So while it was definitely shocking and it came with a mix of emotions, having such a close-knit family to rely on definitely helped with coping with the situation and being able to get through it together.
Cameron, ulcerative colitis, did I say that right?
Yeah, ulcerative colitis. Yeah.
And from the picture you painted, you said that the symptoms were similar to those people suffering from Crohn's disease.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about the journey from when you started feeling these symptoms to when, like Jared just said, you found out that you needed a liver transplant?
Yeah, sure. So, in the beginning, the symptoms, as you alluded to, were consistent with UC. We'll call it UC for short. It's much easier. So periods of irregularity, having, increased frequency and urgency when having to go to the bathroom. But as time went on, more symptoms began to arise that were not necessarily associated with that. And so the telltale signs that there was something going on with the liver as well. Things like jaundice and weight loss and some of the specific markers in your lab work that would come up that would identify that there might be something going on in the liver. So that really forced my physicians to question what else was going on, because, as you said, I was a fairly healthy 13-year-old. And it was at that time that we learned about this other disease called PSC, or primary sclerosing cholangitis. And that's a specific autoimmune disease that specifically attacks the bile ducts in the liver. And it'll often present itself with ulcerative colitis or Crohn's. And so the discussions at that time began to focus more on that side of things, because that was the less stable aspect of my illness at that point in time. But I do remember, for me specifically, the severity of it stuck out in my mom's reaction. And my mom was very good at keeping her emotions in during these procedures. But I came to find out that she found out about this disease a little bit before we had the initial appointment. And she's a nurse, and so she does her research. And I could tell by her inability to stay so poised, whether she realized it or not, I could tell she was really worried. And at that time, at that appointment, is when they said, PSC does not have a cure. But of course, at that time, there was several different medications that we can look towards to try to remedy what was going on in the body, which essentially was that the body was failing to recognize healthy tissue as self. And so it attacks itself. And that is the nature of a lot of autoimmune diseases. And so for quite some time, in my case, those medications did work, which was great. But as Jared alluded to, there was these phases, sort of different chapters of this disease process unfolding. And I remember it was shortly after my 18th birthday when I went to see my, my hepatologist in Manhattan. And the conversation quickly went from, okay, what meds are you on and how are things working, towards, yeah, the meds aren't going to work much longer. We're going to have to talk about a liver transplant. And I remember it was very nonchalant, like, oh, we're going to start talking about transplant. But for me, that was the first I'd ever really heard about it. And so it came with a bit of shock. As Jared said, a lot of mixed emotions. There's a part of you that thinks, well, maybe that's good, right? Maybe I get this transplant and I don't have to worry about this anymore. But of course, that's certainly easier said than done. It's much larger undertaking. And so at that time, shortly after, is when we learned about what the process for getting a liver looks like, and that it wasn't just as easy as getting listed and getting a transplant, but there was this waiting list and things of that nature that we then had to consider as well.
And Jared, the moment you found out that your brother needed a liver transplant, it seemed like, from what we saw in the doc, that you, for lack of a better term, you jumped at the opportunity. You were ready. You wanted to be a part of this. You wanted to help your brother as soon as you can, as quickly as this process could happen. What was that moment like for you?
Instinctual, really. I mean,
said.
I think the second my mom was the one who brought it to my attention and hadn't asked me, but kind of just posed the scenario and the situation, and something in me was like, okay, like if that's an opportunity and I can be Cameron's living donor, then I'll do whatever I need to do in order to be that. And I think it's also just, it goes back to our childhood. We've always been incredibly close, and I know that if the tables were turned, and if that was me who needed the liver transplant, Cameron would do the same for me. So yeah, it really wasn't even a question. So of course, understanding the process was one thing, and then actually having to go through the evaluation period, or process, I should say, to see if you're a viable match was another phase. And ultimately, when I got the call, and I showcased this in the film, and I actually took a video of myself, as you saw, kind of talking into the camera, like right after I found out. It was definitely a bit euphoric, and I feel weird kind of using that as an adjective, but it was like, all right, there's definitely some positivity here, and there's definitely some light at the end of the tunnel. So I was excited about the opportunity. Cameron had been sick for so long, and it was really, like, for the most part, our entire childhood. And so this was an opportunity for him to be able to get his life back. And I mean, what an incredible opportunity for me to go through something just as life-changing, right? It was transformational for me just as it was for him from a health standpoint.
And if you're just tuning into the conversation that we're having now, I've got Cameron and Jared Wohl, brothers, 3 years apart, same birthday. Jared, a living liver donor, and Cameron, the recipient of that. I feel like you guys alluded to in your film that there was a connection that you guys had growing up. There was something that maybe was different than other people had. You shared such love for each other, obviously as siblings, but you had the same birthday. And in your film, it's like, whose birthday is it? Both of you put your hand up right away, and you're both super excited, and almost like you were excited for each other and the fact that you get to share this moment. Where sometimes you see kids that, you know, as a child, it's me, it's my birthday. But what I saw from you guys, it was our birthday. It was like even cooler that you guys got to share that together. And the fact that you guys share so much, obviously so much more now than before, it was really heartwarming to see that. But at the same time, I can't imagine the emotions that you guys went through and how it rocked your world when all this happened. It showed how tight-knit your family was. You know, Cameron, you mentioned how your mom and how she couldn't express certain things at the moment when she knew what you had or potentially had. And that was in the film, and your mom spoke of that, where she was doing the research. She was like, no, it can't be that. So she did even more research. And she's like, she's starting to discover that it's getting, all the evidence is pointing more and more to the fact that her baby boy is going to have a liver transplant. And can you both, you know, touch on what that family unit meant for you, and how it seemed that spirits never fell. Spirits always stayed at the level of belief and faith, and this will work out. And that was projected out to us in the film, and it seems like that was really, like, that was the strength that you guys, the root of your strength moving forward in this process.
Yeah, you know, when I got that call from Jared that he was approved, for me, there was a part of me that just felt like, well, yeah, of course you are.
Yeah.
You know, that things sort of happen so synchronistically, and I know we've touched on that, but yeah, I don't know what it was that led me to believe and have such a strong belief that that was going to work, and it was going to work out in that way. But for whatever reason, during that time period, that really is all that I kept thinking, to the point where I was almost really just more concerned with him doing it. I was really fearful that, God forbid, something could happen to him. And that's what I was preoccupied with. But in the long run, there was just kind of like a sense of knowing. And I know that's not the case for everybody. And so we're very blessed for that. And with regards to our family, I think, Olivier, as you touched on, that sense of faith and that sense of just being there for one another, it was everything. And it goes beyond our immediate family into all of our family and all of our friends. It's so important, because finding yourself in this situation is inevitably going to present some dark days. It's going to be challenging, and you're only as strong as your support system. And so one thing that we're so blessed to have is 2 parents, 2 siblings, and like I said, spouses and friends and family that were just so 100% behind us. Anytime we needed anything, we knew that there were so many people that would be there in a heartbeat. And so that's something that we're very, very blessed to have, even to this day.
Yeah, I'll also add to that. Just I think there's always an overwhelming sense of optimism. And at the end of the day, Cameron and I have always been very close, and we've also fought like the best of brothers. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we are competitive with one another, but we also love each other unconditionally. And that was always how our family was brought up. And now that I have 2 children, I have 2 sons myself that are 2 years or just under 2 years apart. It would have been exciting. One's born on March 1st. The other one's born on March 5th. I was really hoping that they'd have the same birthday, 2 years to the day. But now that I see them, one's 2 and our younger one's 4 months old, it's really special to see the bond that I'm hoping they'll form, just as Cameron and I have. And I can only hope to raise them in the same way that we were raised, to just show that sort of unconditional love and support.
You know, watching your film, it's easy to watch it and not really get emotional, because I guess from my perspective, I already knew what happened in the end. I knew that everything worked out for the best. But there was a moment, even knowing all that, when I saw you both in the hospital, pre-surgery. And Cameron, you were all set up there. You were waiting. You had to wait a little extra. Jared had to go in first, obviously. And that moment, Jared, where your mom was talking to you before you walked in, and she told you she loved you, and she gave you a hug and a kiss, and she said you're a lifesaver. And to me, that one kind of like, it floored me a little bit to see a mom talk to her son and thanking her son for not only, helping his brother out, but taking care of her baby. So, like, I could see the strength that you say that you guys had in that family, and how tight-knit you were, and how important that is for people who are going through struggles. And they don't necessarily know what's coming yet, but to keep that family component as tight as possible, to keep their friends real close, and to always and seek out that support system that will help you through these trying times. So yeah, that was definitely a moment that I wanted to tell you guys about, because it was just a wow factor for me. But having said that, Cameron, you were standing up, walking around. Meanwhile, Jared's still lying down. So, Jared, you were left with 35% of your liver. And Cameron,
correct,
hence the title of the film, you had 65% of your brother's liver in you. And maybe you can kind of walk us through that process. From what I understand, that the liver regenerates itself quite quickly, but maybe you can teach us a little bit about how that works.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So that's the most amazing thing about the liver is that you can donate a portion to somebody in need. And Olivia, as you said, it regenerates fairly quick. I don't want to botch the exact numbers, but if you can imagine, I believe it's within the first 2 months, you have about 85 to 90% of your liver function fully back. And as a matter of fact, even now, Jared is, in terms of mass, is completely regrown. The only thing that would stop him from being able to donate a second time is that they're making anastomoses or connections where they otherwise weren't prior. So that would be the only thing that would stop him from being able to do it a second time. Just speaks to how in size and in function, at this point, he's 100% back to what he was pre-surgery. But yes, initially, I think it took me a little bit shorter period of time to get back on my feet. And that's not out of the ordinary. They do say that typically the recipient is used to feeling so awful and being so sick that almost immediately after the surgery, I shouldn't say immediately, right? So the first couple of days you're still waking up and there's pain, and but in a fairly quick amount of time, I mean, you're walking the next day. And thanks to some medication, I think that was helping me too. I was really ready to go. But for Jared's sake, yeah, I mean, I let him speak to it, but he felt like he got hit by a Mack truck. So I felt really bad, thinking to myself, here I am, I'm walking around. Why isn't he up? And so that was a little bit challenging and very emotional to realize that both the donor and the recipient, that timeline for them to return back to just like baseline, if you will, is a little bit different and to be expected. That was a hard thing for me to accept. Here's my brother who just saved my life, and now I feel amazing, but this was my fear all along. What's going to happen to him? Is he going to be okay? So, of course, that manifested itself as such. But shortly thereafter, Jared was up and about as well.
What was your perspective, Jared?
It's bizarre. Yeah, I was just going to say it was a bizarre experience because, to Cameron's point, you go in, check into the hospital, and you're 100% healthy, and then some hours later, you're recovering from major surgery. And while the recovery was, for me, about a couple months until I started, really kind of getting back on my feet slowly but surely, what I will say is, despite any pain or difficulty in that period of time, I fully expected what that experience would be like based on the hospital, based on the healthcare professionals and the social workers that prepare you going into the experience. So it wasn't like, it wasn't a complete surprise when I woke up from surgery and didn't feel like myself. And if I had to go back and do it again and go through the same exact experience, I would without hesitation. And it's just, I can't emphasize enough that regardless of how difficult the recovery is, the outcome and the transformational experience significantly outweighs that. And for me, I've always been a super proponent for organ donation, but even more so living donation, because it's one thing to check off a box and become a registered organ donor upon being deceased. It's another thing to be able to give someone the gift of life while you're currently living, right? So we have this incredible opportunity, an ample opportunity to save people's lives. And so we certainly need more people to do just that. And I mean, I guess we're living, breathing examples of what's possible, but also we fully understand that there are so many people out there that unfortunately don't have the opportunity. So it's that was really what inspired us to create and produce the documentary in the first place.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. We need people to help people. and in any capacity, at any time. You never know, right? You never know what can go down. It's amazing to see you guys, both of you, right now, all grown up. Jared, you've got kids of your own. Cameron, you're on the verge of getting married, which is a wonderful thing. And hopefully you'll have young ones of your own running around one day, playing with their cousins. Well done, gentlemen. Very inspiring. And through all this, you didn't let it go. You didn't let the experience just stay with you and your family, but you created a movement, the Wave Set, if I'm not mistaken, right? So can you just briefly touch on what the Wave Set is and how you guys go about talking about the experience and the necessity of organ donation?
Sure. So the Wave Set represents exactly what you just said, Olivier, which is that people need to help people, right? WAVE is a loose acronym for We Are Vital to Each Other. So we started this organization when we originally recognized that we had this unique opportunity to showcase what it's like for somebody who is in need of a life-saving organ transplant. And of course, we did that through our crowdfunding campaign and then ultimately the documentary. And now we continue to spread awareness and educate as a fund, as an official partnership of NJ Sharing Network. And it's been just an incredible journey to meet other people going through this and sharing our experience so that we can educate those who might not be familiar with organ donation about what it's like for, as Jared said, so many of the people who are in desperate need of a life-saving organ transplant.
Amazing. Hats off to you guys. You know that the Transplant Games, all types of different competitions, so many athletes from across the country and around the world that join the Transplant Games. And this year they're in New Jersey, home of the Wohl brothers and the Wohl family. And hopefully one day we'll get hockey to be a part of this, and maybe we can get the Wohl brothers back on the ice. Just saying. It'd be awesome.
Let's do it.
But we've got the golf bug big time, so we'll make up for it there.
Okay, hopefully, maybe one day we'll get a foursome. We'll get out there and we'll swing a little.
Yeah.
Jared, Cameron, thank you guys so much for spending time with us, having a conversation with us, teaching us some things, and motivating people to, like you said, help people, because that's what it's all about. Appreciate you guys so very much. Best of luck moving forward. Hope to see you guys in person one day, and we'll hopefully see you on the ice as well.
Yes. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Wow, what a conversation. Jared and Cameron Wohl, 65%. If you haven't seen it, do so. It'll motivate you. It'll inspire you. It'll tug on your heartstrings, and it'll teach you about people helping people. That's what it's all about.